Daddy eats lots. Daddy eats lots. Daddy eats lots. Munch, munch, munch.
Hello and welcome to Daddy Eats Last, where we discuss the challenges of being a man in modern society and whatever the hell that even means. I'm Kane, and the boys are back in town. Joining me are Ryan and Matthew. How are you, gents?
I'm good, mate. Good to have you back, Ryan. The three amigos are back in town.
Indeed. Thanks for having me back. I'm back from some European adventures. Nice to be back home in Australia, albeit a very cold and miserable Melbourne.
Well, it looks like we do record this podcast via video and then take the audio out of it. It does look like it's cold in Brisbane, Matthew, because you have a robe on.
Ever since I moved up from Melbourne, I really feel the cold up here. So I took the beanie off because I know you boys would take the piss, but I forgot you could see the robe. But.
Well, it does look Rocky Balboa circa the original Rocky film back in the 70s. So I like it. I like it, mate.
If only I could box like the great man.
Yeah, Italian Stallion. Oh, we are talking comparisons tonight. That's a good one, Matthew. If you could box like that, then you could be doing anything these days. But we're talking comparisons, and this one was one that Ryan brought up. There's a particular list which comes out each year, and this is where Ryan maybe gets a little bit antsy. So I might hand it over to you, Ryan, to tell us some more.
Yes. Probably as a result of being a highly ambitious and energetic and strong young man, every 12 months there's a wonderful list that comes out in Australia called the Australian Financial Review Top 200 Rich List. And usually I'm feeling pretty good about my year, and then I'll read that like on a long flight back from Europe and suddenly not feel so great about my year and businesses and everything that we're doing. So that brought up the idea of comparisons.
You weren't on the list this year?
I was not on the list this year, Kane. No, I think I'm about $489 million short of the list. Maybe 488 million. So we'll see.
That's not too far. You could bridge that gap, I think, by this time next year on the podcast.
Sure. If we do, I don't know what I'll do. I'll buy you both a house. There we go.
Hopefully you'll still be doing the podcast despite that.
I will.
Okay, so
remember where you come from.
Yeah, that is true. So why is there a comparison to that list? And I guess what's the basis of I guess any comparison to begin with? Like, people obviously feel the need to compare themselves to other people and measure and things like that. What's the rationale behind it for you?
Yeah, it's a good question, one that I've thought about, because it's really only probably the last year or two that I've actually paid attention to that list. Prior to that, I probably didn't even know that we had a list like that in Australia. Certainly growing up, I definitely did not know that we had a list like that in Australia, because it was so far, I guess, out of the realm of possibility back then. But probably for me, I see a lot of people on that list as people that I look up to, in terms of not because of wealth, and just to qualify that, it's not a comparison because of a wealth impact. It's a comparison because I'm a believer that this work that I do and business and that kind of thing, when used for good reasons, and there's plenty of people that use it for bad, but when used for good reasons, you help a lot of people. And by virtue of helping a lot of people, you'll get you'll get fruits for the labor there. And that I've sort of now started to see that the list with some people that are on there that I actually know one or two that are on the AFI Young Rich list. It's definitely they're on there because they've built something that makes a lot of people happy and helps a lot of people. And that's a huge driver for me. And I've got, ambitions to do something like that or work on something like that. So that's probably where that comes in a little bit, if I'm guessing. But I don't know, I'd probably need a psych to unpack all that.
Well, partner might be a psych.
She is, but I know that she's definitely not going to touch that one.
Okay, so you mentioned before there's people. Can you give a couple of examples of people that who are on that list that you think, okay, that's a comparable sort of thing that I'd like to do or achieve?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, I mean, if you look at one of the
Sorry, I
new
should go back.
entries,
Is it more a specific comparison or is it more a general comparison?
I think it would be more a general comparison, but there are a few specific comparisons because there are a couple of people of similar age that are on that list. So I think it's a bit of a culmination of both, if I'm honest. Although one observation that I did make with the list is that there's pretty much, and this may be a good or bad observation around what healthcare is, but there's very few, if any, people that are on there that are involved in healthcare businesses. So that might not pay as well as some other finance and other stuff.
So is this a hard goal of yours that you've set to one day make this list, or do you just look at the people in your field, I guess, and take things away from that of how to maybe improve your business as such?
Yeah, I think it's not a hard goal to make the list. I'm certainly not going to be upset if I never make the list, because even getting close to it is a significant achievement in that space. I think it is sort of a just wanting to play at that level, and seeing those other people doing exciting things, and the way that they're helping people or businesses, or having a platform to actually impact and try and do things to help I guess Australia or the world. Sort of, I guess, taking a lead from the Atlassian guys, who are very, very high up on the list, and how they're using their platform now to push renewable energy, and they build a business essentially just helping other businesses help more people. So it's probably definitely not a hard comparison. That might change over the years. I don't know. Like I said, it's only one of the things I've been looking at probably the last year or two because it's got on my radar. But it's sort of like you do look at it and go, well, these are some of the most successful entrepreneurs and business leaders and whatnot in the country. When you don't look at those that have obviously inherited through family wealth and that kind of thing, there does become a bit of that comparison and driver, and how do you get to, I guess, that stage? Or why are you not at that stage is probably the more comparison piece that you then kind of can beat yourself up on a little bit.
So how do you feel after you close the magazine, after you've read all 200? Do you walk away feeling empowered? Do you walk away maybe a touch jealous, if that's the right word, or what's your feelings?
It's a fair point there. I'm definitely a touch jealous. Like, you'd be silly not to admit on that one. Yeah, it's a combination. It makes you look at some things on what you're doing. So I'm probably not necessarily empowered, but a little bit strategic. But also, there's an element of not feeling overly great. So you do have to, like, it's kind of like, and it can be, if you're sitting at the office at 8 p.m. working a job that you're not necessarily too happy about, and you've just gone through Instagram and seen that all your friends are posting photos of the Greek islands, you're probably not feeling too great after that either. So it's a little bit of that element there.
I think that's an important difference you're making there as well. There's some context to your comparison where some people just blindly compare their life with what they see on Instagram or Twitter or Snapchat or insert name of social media platform of preference, where they may not have any idea of what that person's done or sacrificed or needs to do to achieve whatever's on that particular social media platform, where there's a context to your comparison. It's, I'm doing this person's doing that. I can read this person's background in this magazine about what they've done to get there. So it's maybe more of a healthy comparison, that blind sort of social media comparison that I guess is becoming more common.
Yeah, I think it's more of and that's probably why the word strategic comes out rather than empowered. You can take some learnings from it. You can do a bit of reflection, and sort of go from there. But yeah, you definitely don't feel great after reading a list like that.
This is interesting because, you know, I like you, Ryan, and, you know, how successful you've been and how young you are, and, you know, the businesses you've got, the different roles you have. And from where I sit, you're a very successful person. And for you to read a list like that and feel, well, not down, but how you just described before, whereas someone who would look at you might look at themselves and say, you know, oh, wow, you know, I'm the same age as this person, and Ryan's done all this kind of stuff. I've only done this. So it's interesting that, you know, different people look at different other people and can compare themselves, even though they are in their own right successful like yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you, Matt. So, well, I mean, that's probably why the reason that I thought this topic and just to kind of normalize that. Because I know if I had a conversation like this with some friends of mine, they'd be open to chatting about it. And honestly, if I had a conversation like this with other friends of mine, they would be probably very against it for that reason, in terms of like, fortunately, I've had a bit of success and been quite fortunate and do get to play at a pretty good level and a very good level for someone my age. But yeah, you read a list like that, I guess it's normalizing that for them, they'd probably get a bit pissed off with me. But other friends would acknowledge. But I suppose the reason that it's something worthwhile talking about for me is reading a list like that, where somebody else, and you know, very kind what you said there, might look at it and go, geez, I think you're super successful or doing really well. Everybody can have some form of comparison. Like I read a list like that and feel very, very small after reading a list like that. So I suppose, yeah, it's just normalizing that. And even knowing a couple people that I do know on the young rich list side of it, it's been very refreshing hearing similar things from them actually. When I look at them and just go, oh my God, you're worth $50 million and you've built this 400-person company, and you think that you're only tip of the iceberg and still haven't even done anything worth of achievement. So, yeah.
It's interesting. How are you, Matthew, comparison-wise? Do you do any comparison on any sort of level with anything?
I'm a bit of a blunt instrument, Kane, so... No, look, I'd probably compare myself in not so much of a business sense, but maybe around a dad sense, perhaps. So, you know, when I look at other dads within, say, the role of me as school, perhaps. So, you know, school participation, volunteering, that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I might look at that and see what I'm doing and look at what they're doing. Again, like you said before, you know, you don't really know the backstory of people too much. So that's probably the category I'd fit into. So I might be comparing in the wrong way. But yeah, so that's at my point in life, that's what I'm comparing at the moment. So yeah, fathers and families and what other families are doing on weekends perhaps and things like that.
Yeah, and they're both valid areas of life to compare, I guess, the financial aspect of life and I guess like in your instance, a fatherhood aspect. And they're both, yeah, like I said, completely plausible things you can compare on. Like, and again, the same as what you were saying to Ryan before, like from everything I've seen, the way you interact with your kids, you're an amazing father, and there's lots of people out there who'd aspire to be as good a father as you are. And you've communicated some really excellent messages over the almost year we've been doing this podcast. So kudos to you, mate.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Yeah, cheers. What about you, Kane? What do you compare yourself to?
I'm always the outlier on these sort of things. I'm always a weird cat. I don't really do much comparison. I kind of always just think everything is my fault and everything is my choice. So if something's good or if something's bad, it's my fault and it's my choice. So I've chosen to do this. If something's gone wrong, it's always my fault. I don't really try to blame anyone else for wherever I am, be it like business, be it personal life, be it how I am as a father. It's all my choice and it's all my fault, whether it's something which is good or something which is bad. And we all have unique backgrounds, unique skills, and we're all just hopefully trying our best. And I'd like to think I'm trying my best, but when it comes down to it, yeah, the buck kind of stops with me.
Yeah, I think there's probably actually taking responsibility there in terms of what what you're saying there. And I'd like to think that I'm a person that definitely does that. But I can't stop the comparison stuff continually happening. Like it used to happen probably with playing a lot of sport as a kid and all that kind of thing. And I'll be honest, actually, I'm highly envious of people that can. My brother's an example of that. He's one of these people that just seems to care about only what's happening on that day. He's actually sleeping in a van that he's driving from Vancouver to mid-Canada at the moment, working on a ski field for 2 years over in Canada as a 25-year-old guy on a career break. And I just sit there and I'm so envious and in a little bit way jealous psychologically that I just know there's no way that I could do that because of this whole, I guess possibly a desire to compete and play in the areas that I do, which as a by virtue of that results to some form of comparisons, which just seem to be a little bit inevitable. But yeah, highly envious of people like you, Kane.
I know. Hey, don't get me wrong. I get fleeting moments where I kind of get pangs of jealousy over X or Y, but I can usually get past them pretty quickly. It's just like, okay, well, ultimately it was my choice to do X or it was my choice to do Y, and therefore it's my fault that I'm in this situation. So yeah, why? Everyone, some kind of jealousy is absolutely normal. Hopefully I try to minimize it as much as I can, just because otherwise it just can eat you up.
Yeah, I do wonder if there's, and even your example that you were using there, Matt, and, ditto to what Kane was saying. Like, I've seen you with your kids and you're fantastic as a father and got so much focus on them as well. But I just feel like today there's more social pressures and social norms and just people comparing themselves to, and it might not even be comparing themselves to another person, but comparing themselves to an idealistic thing of this is how it should be, or by this age you should, get married or have a kid or whatever it happens to be. And I just wondered, we talked about the rich list there, but I just see there's more and more lists just generally across the media. Slight culprit of that, some businesses that I've had and personally have been involved in some, which has probably caught me up in a bit of this, but I just see that there's this constant desire of this social pressure and comparison. And I don't know whether I'm just reading in that or you guys are feeling that there's more of that today.
No, I'm 100% with you. I think everyone now has a platform to comment and judge, where before 10 or 15 years ago, there was no platform. There was no social media where you could take a snapshot of something and make a judgment call, be it a good judgment or a bad judgment, or comment on something that somebody's done. And people are very quick to judge and very quick to comment these days. And it wasn't like this 15 years ago.
I think as well, it depends how much you buy into the social media, or what's being said on social media as well. So you can be an observer on social media, or you can be a keyboard warrior in some respects on social media, I guess. But how much you take away from it and how seriously you take it as well. You mentioned before, Kane, Facebook and on Instagram and things like that, status updates. Someone's drinking a coffee on a Caribbean island. They might have just got fired from their job and they've just spent their, 4 weeks, leave paid to get there and drink the coffee, but no one knows the backstory. So it's, I'm a big believer on social media. You really, a lot of these things take with a grain of salt, and a lot of, other media platforms as well.
I'm very much an observer. I don't really partake in much. I tweet stuff every now and again, mainly stuff which amuses me as much as anything else, and to promote bits and pieces. But I think it was even the other day, like I'd turned 40 last week, and I still do dumb things. Like I cooked oven chips a couple of days after that, and I said to my partner, "Oh, listen, don't eat them; they're a bit hot." So I waited about a minute, put one in my mouth to eat it, and I was like burning my mouth. I'd gone, "Oh, it'll be right," and I swallowed it, and it burnt down the back of my throat. Like I had a sore throat for 3 days. that's the kind of stuff I post on Twitter, just dumb stuff that I do or dumb stuff that I see. But some people take it a lot more seriously. When I say seriously, they post things which can make other people feel bad if they were to compare against it, even though there's no context.
Yeah, I think one of the things I've done on my phone is set, like you can actually set, and it's surprisingly scary when you do it. You can set like a 30-minute thing with social media, and that is a bit tricky because there's a number of things, say through LinkedIn, that we do or use work-wise. But once 30 minutes of social media screen time comes up, my phone will actually tell me, and it gives you the option of extending for 15 minutes or ignoring for the day. And even if you do and extend 15 minutes or ignoring for a day, it just highlights how much time we can spend on these things and get caught up. You know, I think there's a lot of good in it. Like, I'm a big fan of when I'm having a down day going on, don't know if you guys have seen Batuta Advocate on Instagram, which is this amazing newspaper. It's supposed to be a newspaper out of Queensland that just make the funniest memes. So there's positives like that, but I've noticed actually things have been a bit better now that I've put this app on, and I'm working very hard on comparing myself to myself yesterday versus somebody else's today. And that was a thing that I read probably about 3 months ago that's kind of been like a real focus to go, if I'm progressing from the goals yesterday or a week ago or a month or whatever it was, and that's my competing, I guess, metric, as much as the comparison stories kick in and they're problematic at times, if that's continuing to go forward, then life is pretty good. And that's what you should be focusing on the comparison on.
100% agree. The only comparison I do is really against myself from previous years. Even that, man, I turned 40 last week and was and I actually managed to go down a walk down memory lane because I was asked to do something which I'd done sort of 15, 20 years before. I was looking at some of the stuff that I was doing 15 or 20 years before. I'm like, I don't think I've got half the capability that I had back then. I think I'm less capable as a person now than I was when I was 25. But I'm probably a better person to be around, and maybe a nicer person with regards to the people around me. But purely on my capability, I was looking at some of the stuff I was doing 15 years ago. I can't believe I even flipping did that. So I don't know. I don't know if that's a good comparison or a bad comparison. I'm a better person, but I'm a dumb shit.
Depends on your metrics. It's all about the data metrics. If your metric is to be a better person, well, which is a very, very good metric, by the way, you're probably doing pretty well.
Yeah, I hope so. That's all I've got to hang my hat on.
But maybe that's the thing. I mean, maybe, realistically, a comparison is comparing a fixed time compared to a fixed time in a constantly moving world. So if you, I don't know, I've only just thought of that then, but looking at it that way, it's probably only ever a very fleeting thing.
Do you, Ryan, after you've read the BRW 200, sorry to go back to this, but do you then reevaluate your goals that you've set? Because I know you do that at the start of the year every year, and you reevaluate again, December the following year. Do you amend or go back and relook at, or you just, that's it, you walk away from the list and just hold off?
It's a good question. I probably don't amend. Like, I definitely haven't come back and changed any that I currently have for this year. But I do think, I guess I really start to explore what other paths or possibilities could be, and whether that actually gets pursued or not, or whether that, mulling that over for, what are we, halfway through the year? So for the next 6 months would actually reshape other goals, to next year, possibly. So it's a good question that I'll have to actually think about and see if it does influence my goals next year.
Almost like a mid-year review, perhaps.
Yeah. It definitely makes you go back to your goals and go, hang on, I look at this and yes, that would be amazing to be going to there, but bringing it back to a much more realistic state, will these continue to make me go, if I compare myself to yesterday at the end of the year, having achieved these, be progress? So in a way, it does help kind of bring down that level and go, actually, that will still be progress to the direction that I want to go. Because if I'm completely honest, whilst I get somewhat envious of that list and want to be doing things that I guess wanting to compete at that level, I've got to be honest and say that I don't necessarily want the public profile that a list like that could give, and I wouldn't necessarily want suddenly all these third cousins reaching out to me if I ever hit a list like that. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword.
Well, it does that makes a lot of sense. And again, using the context of your comparison to reevaluate you and what you want to do, that's the important part about the comparisons. Actually using that energy, be it sort of say nervous energy or that sort of jealous energy or whatever it is, to then apply that to actually change your situation if you want to, and move you forward further along your the road to your goals. That's the important part of, if you are going to compare stuff, that you do it in the right context and that you use it.
Goes back to exactly what you said before, Kane, about everything is a choice.
Everything is a choice. And it's your choice to listen to Daddy Eats Last. And it's also your choice to subscribe to Daddy Eats Last. You can do that on iTunes. And while you're there, please leave a review. Tell your mates about the podcast, especially if they are guys. Most of all, thanks for listening. And we'll be back next week for another episode, or should I say serving, of Daddy Eats Last. How's that for a dad joke? Matthew, is that a good dad joke, comparison-wise?
Like it did be rolling on the floor, is that how you say it?
Catch you all next week.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.